private research organization here in Catalonia, and the second in Spain. We are currently employing 650 researchers, and we have different sites spread through the region. We have sites in Lleida, in Tarragona, in Girona, of course in Barcelona, and then also in other technological sites like Mataró, Cerdanyola, Reus, Amposta, Manresa, etc. One of the missions that we have in our foundation is to contribute to the industrial sustainability. When you say these two words, industrial and sustainability, the faces of the audience says, oh, another speech on the same topics and on the same issues that doesn't mean anything. Probably, I can understand because I have been in several speeches. Our approach in this sense is different. Let me explain how we see it. We were glad to read the conclusions of the last World Manufacturing Forum, were celebrated in Como in September last year, where the experts said that a modern industry could be one of the solutions against the threats and the let's say difficulties that our society or our world is facing. That's why here in Eurecat we understand sustainability in three terms. The first one is in terms of environment. That's why then under environment we differentiate three different aspects. One is related with, of course, energy. Industry is, as you know, one of the most or the largest consumer of energy in the world. So one of our research groups is facing that topic. The other one is related with efficiency. The more efficient the process is, the less resources we use to produce a part or to deliver a service. But my friends, also in terms of circularity and circular economy. The more efficient a process is, the better contribution it's putting in terms of circular economy. That's why we have a unit, a research unit, working specifically in that topic. We do not put the focus in a specific sector, because in our view, we see that there is this kind of merging and cross-sectorial approaches that is becoming more and more usual in the advanced industrial regions in the world. That's why we see that companies who were used to produce cars, like Seat, now they are announcing that they are going to manufacture how is it saying? Rollers, exactly. Thank you, Jordi. Rollers. So things are changing. Companies that were producing or manufacturing food, now they say that they are going to produce directly the packaging, which will be the food, by the way. So that's why we don't put the accent on the vertical sector, because we see this cross-sectorial approach. We understand industrial sustainability also in terms of social inclusion, not only related with the gender issue, which is for sure one of the challenges that Europe has to face in the next years in industries, but also in other inclusions. We see that making the work environment more friendly would help to the inclusion of specific segments of the society which are now, let's say, in a high risk to be marginated. And then last but not least, we understand sustainability also in an economic way. On Tuesday, during the opening session of the Congress, Professor Roche from a business school, from ESADE, explained that 9 out of the 10 oldest companies, industrial companies in the world, were from Japan. Those companies have more than 150 years. Companies like Mitsubishi, companies like Honda, they are all industrial manufacturing companies, and they are still competing against other industries and companies that we have now in the newspapers. The longer life that an industry has, the better quality of life for its territory. So, with these 3 pillars from EURECAT, we are making research, we are developing technologies, and always, 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 as Joan has said, in collaboration with the industries. I think that this is a key point. You have to have a very good industrial friend, neighbor, brother in this approach if you want to approach the market, if you want to succeed in the market, and if you want to deliver a result to the society. I don't want to bother you more with this type of things. In case that you are interested in knowing more about EURECAT, I invite you to visit our booth in the exhibition. There are several machines, there are also several demo parts, and my colleagues from the consortium and also from the booth will be happy to explain you more. And now, please, I would like to ask Mr. Christoph Meyer from the Interreg program, Joint Secretariat, to give an overview on the Green Manufacturing Innovation Program, Greenomed. Please, Christoph. The floor is yours, and the mouse, well, the mouse, it's not anymore a mouse. Here you have.
Okay.
The microphone.
That makes too many things.
You can leave it on, or in the chair if you want.
There's nobody sitting, okay. Just checking. Okay, hello. Christoph Meyer from the Program Secretary in Marseille. First of all, I wanted to give you an outlook more or less on the program. We will see what, concerning green manufacturing, what I can contribute, because I've been asking my colleague about projects on green manufacturing, who is working on this community for a longer time. And she told me that actually Greenomed is the only one that is really specialized on green manufacturing. So I will try to give you some input, because I thought there might be some interfaces, but it will not be possible to specialize on green manufacturing, because you are much more expert on this than what I can contribute. First of all, to give you some information about the program that is funding this project. So we are around the northern part of the Mediterranean. You can see these areas in dark green are all the areas that are inside the program. Blue areas as well. The difference between the colors is referring to the type of funding. We have, as you might know, EIDF funding. This is concerning most parts of the program, all these dark green parts. And then we have pre-admission fundings for the countries that are, for the moment, outside of the European Union. It's a very diverse community from the west at the Atlantic side to almost going to Asia. You see, we have 13 countries, 14 languages. more or less 122 million inhabitants are covered by this program. A large surface, more than France, more than France and Germany together, for example. Then you see here the funding that we have. You might judge if 224 million plus 9 million pre-admission funding is a lot or not for this area. The point is that in any case, it cannot be a program that is that has a very broad approach. It has to be somehow focused because with the funding that we have, as you see the whole area, we cannot fund projects all over the space. We have to be thematically focused on particular thematic projects. Okay, this is more or less just to give you an outlook on I think it was mid of last year, project partners that are participating in the program. You see there are some concentrations at certain areas. You see some of the partners are even from outside the program. This also is possible under certain conditions. And now I'm coming to the organization of the program. It is organized in different communities. The one Green Growth is the community that Greenomed is referring to. Then you see we have quite, I call it neighbor communities like Blue Growth and Social and Creative, where there are also a lot of projects that are linked to the subject of economy. And then we have other subjects like transport and resources, biodiversity. We say, okay, we have 878 participations, which does not mean that we have as much participants, because of course a lot of partners are in several projects. We have one governance project. This is a little bit different. That is where we have all the partners that are somehow planning, designing the future of the Mediterranean territory. And then you can see how the advancement of the invested funding so far. Okay, I'm just leaving it to Merce to give a closer outlook on the green growth community. Because we have this particularity that we have for every community. We have one, I call it vertical project that is somehow organizing events inside the community and also the cross-fertilization among the projects. So she has a much better outlook on what is done inside the community. I give you some, because I have been asked for what the program can do for green manufacturing. So I give you some ideas where we could perhaps have interfaces on the program side. Okay, then I'm going to the community social creative, and now I'm presenting a project that is going on until July still. It is called Co-Create, and their approach is they are looking at traditional manufacturing and the innovative and cultural and creative industries from the other side, and they are trying from the design side. So their approach is more from the design side. Right now they have an event in Milan, so I don't think there's somebody around here in Barcelona, even if they have partners also from Barcelona. So they had made on different scales these matching procedures where they try to match partners that are coming from the design side and from the manufacturing side. And they came up with ideas. So they have developed something like the 20 best ideas. So what you can find there is, for example, this is an idea on sustainable materials for clothing. So they wanted to leave behind this area where you have this period where you have oil and petroleum as manufacturing for clothing resource and go to more natural resources. And another idea is here they come with moss for producing energy. Just to give you an outlook on what they have been working on. Okay, then I have found another project that is working on the textile sector. It is called Creative Wear. And as you see, they want to innovate existing and traditional business models and going beyond the fashion industry, only the fashion industry. So what they are doing, they are somehow in spin-off with the Horizon 2020 project, and they have created different hubs around the Mediterranean. And one of the hubs is in Valencia. It is focused on advanced manufacturing, circular economy, and clean technology. So this might also be perhaps an interesting approach to contact from to create an interface with Greenomed. Okay. Otherwise, I've been thinking, okay, why not looking what is done with green manufacturing in other Interreg programs? Because, as you know, MED is one of 15 transnational Interreg programs. But as you see, when I'm looking in a search engine, I just have been searching for Interreg green manufacturing. What you find is always Greenomed. Below you see you have from another program, but I see you have even already been in the situation to create an interface with Danube program, which because I was working with them before, so I'm impressed. So I can say that you have already a good outlook on what is going on in Interreg projects on green manufacturing. And to bring it to an end, just to give you some tracks for capitalization, because you are also approaching now the last quarter, perhaps, of the project. What can you do with the results? Just to give you an idea, of course, we are trying to bring the next Mediterranean Interreg program on track. But then you have other Interreg programs like Alpine Space, or in total there are 15 of them. You might look perhaps more on the private funding side, going for crowdfunding, or going for completely different programs, or more on the as I know you are also very active on the policy side, to work in cooperation with policy stakeholders for the next policy programs, like macro-region programs or other regional programs. And just to give you an idea of what could be questions to, when you have the meeting, to think about what is your message and to whom are you addressing it, and also to think about what you would think should be left of your project at the end, and also perhaps 3 years afterwards. So that's already what I wanted to say from the program side. Now, thank you, welcome.
Thank you very much, Mr. Meyer. Now I would like to invite Ms. Mercè Boy Roura to talk a little bit on how the circular economy is considered and is appointed in this Interreg MED program, and especially under the Green Growth Community.
Bon dia a tothom. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mercè Boy Roura. I'm working for the Beta Technological Center at the University of Vic, not far from here, and we are the lead partners of the Interreg MED Green Growth Community, which is one of the 8 communities of the Interreg MED program. this community has as overall objective or philosophy to promote sustainable development in the Mediterranean based on the natural, on the sound management of the natural resources and taking into account also the effects on the market by creating green jobs and promoting social inclusion. Then this thematic community, what aims to do is to support the projects that are under this community, and we act a little bit as a cluster. We say we are a community of projects, but it's we could also say it's a cluster of projects because we support the projects under this topic in terms of communication and capitalization of results in order to increase their impact at policy level and also to increase their opportunities to replicate their model or their results into other regions. Our community is the second biggest one in the Interreg program. As I said, it counts with 14 projects involving 150 partners from the quadruple helix. And that means that there are partners that are coming from universities, from public administrations, from SMEs, clusters, and also from NGOs. As Christoph already mentioned, there are 12 countries participating in this project, and each project has several regions. And the total budget for these 14 projects is 34 million euros. Green growth, as you know, it's a very wide topic, and we have several projects in this community working on agri-food sector, eco-innovation, smart cities, waste management, or also in green growth finance. Green manufacture, as we said, it's maybe the only one working specifically on this topic, but we also think that being engaged in this community and exchanging knowledge and best practices with other projects also brings opportunities and new ideas that maybe you didn't think about. So what we do as a community, as I said, community building, creating this network of projects, capitalization activities, and then I will explain you a little bit what we are working currently on about the thematic working groups. So we've been working already for 2 years, and we have organized already 3 transnational events. One of them, the first one, in fact, was in Girona, where Exio also participated. Then we had, for instance, a business forum and a cluster session. The cluster session was held in November last year in Ecomondo, the Green Technology Fair in Rimini, in Italy, where also different partners of Greenomed and other clusters participating in other Interreg projects participated and exchanged their best practices on how they promote sustainability among their members of the cluster. And then also other workshops or networking sessions in order to enlarge the context of each of the partners and projects. Now I will focus on the thematic working groups. We have created these thematic working groups in order to make the projects work together, to increase the synergies among projects and to create more opportunities, and also to get results coming from the different projects and in different topics. The topics that we related the thematic working groups are the key action areas of the EU Circular Economy Action Plan, because most of our projects of the community are working towards these topics, and also because nowadays, as you know, circular economy is very relevant at the European level, but also worldwide. So we thought that was the best opportunity to work together on these topics. And these working groups also so the results of these working groups will be the creation of different policy outcomes, such as the technical reports, policy recommendation, or legal recommendations. The Green Growth Book, it's more a compilation of all the work that we've been doing during these past years in the Green Growth community. So as I told you, we linked the working groups to the key action areas of the Circular Economy Action Plan. And the first working group, it's based on sustainable consumption and production, on resource efficiency, more specifically. The second one is more on public procurement, smart and green public services, let's say. The third one on waste prevention and management. And a fourth one, it's a more horizontal one, or one that is more transversal to all the projects of the community, and is where Greenomed is actively participating. I will just explain you briefly the working groups. I'm not going to get too much in detail to not get too bored. So the first group, we have these projects participating. Most of them are involved in the, are working on the agri-food sector, as you can see here. And then the challenges that they identify is that they have to find ways to increase the efficiency of the resources in order to reduce the CO2 emissions, and also how to implement eco-design measures and eco-labeling. And the projects are working towards this end by, for instance, testing the PEF methodology across different food chains like meat, dairy, or olive oil. Then there's also some other projects designing innovative greenhouses and technologies, or alternative packaging solutions. The second group is basically on green smart and green public services, as I mentioned. And the key challenges are that most of the public procurement is only addressing economical terms and not environmental terms. And also there's lack of capacity in public administrations, but as well as in SMEs in order to innovate in this sector. So there are different projects that are working towards increasing the capacity building activities for public administrations, but also for SMEs, and to strengthen the SMEs and entrepreneurs' capacities to enter this green market. The third one is on waste prevention and management. And the key challenges are to reduce the level of waste generation. And here we have two projects. One is working on organic waste and how to valorize these organic waste coming from pig and cow farms, basically. And another one is working towards testing new technologies to reduce the inorganic waste that is produced along the food chain. Finally, the biggest group is the fourth one on competitiveness and innovation. We have several projects, and as I mentioned, Greenomed is there. And the key challenges they identify is they have to improve the SMEs' access to innovation and also increase the innovation market and technology transfer from research to the private sector, mainly. And the outcomes is to strengthen this the clusters to support SMEs in the circular economy process, how the SMEs can be more successful by creating circular economy business models, increase the capacity building and professional training for SMEs, technology transfer, and access to public-private investment and innovation. In this community, we have several projects that are inviting SMEs to participate in their projects in order to test these innovative methods. So basically, at this stage, we are working on these working groups. We have the first draft of the white papers that here you can see as an example, and they will be ready in the next month. So we will be happy to share them with you. And if you just have any questions, you can come later on and ask me, or you can always send me an email. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Okay, and now let's talk about the Greenomed project. Sorry. Probably the most repeated word during this morning. So I kindly ask Giacomo Copani, the project manager, to talk a little bit on the Greenomed.
Thank you, Joan. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks to all the previous speakers for the impressive and also very nice presentations. Now, welcome to Greenomed, ladies and gentlemen. In the MED community, Greenomed is the project saying that in the Mediterranean Europe, we need also manufacturing and more manufacturing. Because manufacturing, together with all the specializations of the Mediterranean Europe, can guarantee welfare, can guarantee jobs. Obviously, it should not be manufacturing in general. It should be green manufacturing, but the green manufacturing which is really harmonically coexisting with all the other specializations, with tourism, with agriculture, with brew growth. So this is the main vision of Greenomed, and in order to set the scene for the work of the day, we are going to introduce the project very shortly. We will start with a video of the project and then come back with some specific message.
A fundamental pillar of the European economy. Manufacturing is a fundamental pillar of the European economy. It represents approximately 21% of the EU's GDP. There are 2.1 million manufacturing companies across the EU, creating jobs for more than 30 million EU citizens. As a result, the future of the European economy strongly relies on its manufacturing sector. Having a closer look at the manufacturing sector, it consumes 30% of the world energy production, generates 28% of the total CO2 emission, and produces around 410 million tonnes of waste each year. Thus, to limit the environmental impact of the industry and to create a sustainable economy, Europe needs to shift towards green manufacturing and circular economy, to reuse, remanufacture, and recycle the industrial and consumers' waste in order to close the loop. In this way, the industry will contribute to a greener future by reducing the energy consumption, decreasing the waste production, and lowering the emission level. It will also contribute to a more prosperous Europe by creating new markets for green products and technologies and generating opportunities for green entrepreneurship and jobs. Such positive environmental and economic impacts will result in an increased well-being of citizens. However, the implementation of green manufacturing and circular economy is challenging for companies, especially for small and medium enterprises. It requires high investment in innovative processes, technologies and business models that are new to companies and that constitute barriers for the paradigm shift. But what if companies can have access to the latest innovative green technologies to preliminarily test them, understand their impacts, and get their personnel trained before investing in introducing them in their factories? Greenomed project aims at providing companies with this opportunity. It's a project co-funded by the European Regional Development Fund in the frame of the Interreg MED programme. 10 partners, including clusters and research and technology centres, have come together in Greenomed, coordinated by the National Research Council of Italy. Political authorities and other intermediaries act as associate partners to establish the required institutional framework. Within the consortium, advanced manufacturing regions collaborate with emerging MED regions to establish a European network of pilot plants for green manufacturing. To this aim, Greenomed develops and tests a structured methodology that enables the effective intra- and inter-regional cooperation. It is grounded on the experience of the Vanguard Initiative, which is a network of more than 30 EU regions striving for industrial innovation through smart specialisation. Through the methodology, complementary stakeholders get engaged in the cooperation process. Clusters will act as orchestrators by offering services such as the creation and animation of the thematic regional working groups and their internationalisation. These working groups will present to the policymakers their projects of pilot plants in order to trigger proper support initiatives. In this way, the authorities can set up funding instruments based on highly relevant innovation priorities. As a result, Greenomed will start 3 trans-regional European pilot plant projects for green manufacturing, engaging at least 100 companies across MED regions, and will transfer the cooperation methodology to 8 or more transnational clusters. In Greenomed, we collaborate to make manufacturing green.
Okay, so this was to introduce the project in a nice way without talking too much. Just let me stress few main messages coming from the project and its big focus. What are we talking about? We are talking about green manufacturing, and we are very aware of the fact that in Europe we develop a lot of research results also on green manufacturing and green manufacturing technologies, but we are struggling to uptake these results in companies. So we are struggling to overcome the famous valley of death. One of the solutions is to have pilot plants at disposal of companies and especially at disposal of SMEs. What are pilot plants? Pilot plants are supposed to be open facilities where companies, especially SMEs, can find innovative technologies, they can test them, they can develop skills while being educated on the technologies, and they also find an ecosystem of innovators that can support the business planning and the real integration of those technologies in companies. So not only hardware, but also competencies, also in ecosystems where companies and SMEs find research centers, university, technology companies, associations, potential customers, and so on. This concept of pilot plants was really stressed in Europe by some recent initiatives, for example, the Vanguard initiative, to which some of the partners of the Greenomed project participate. In reality, we were also initiators of some of them. So this is a quite established concept, and in particular in Vanguard we are addressing the area of efficient and sustainable manufacturing. So what is Greenomed about? We say we need pilot plants, they are important, we say we need these ecosystems, but they are not in place yet. So we need to conceive, we need to design them, we have to build them, we have to operate them. How to do that? We need to cooperate in Europe based on smart specialization. So every region, in particular of Mediterranean Europe, should find a specialization, should define what type of pilot plants is needed for its business, and then should go towards implementation. So a number of regions have to cooperate in this very complicated process, and we need to do that in a structured way. We need a methodology. Greenomed is proposing a methodology for cooperating among European regions. In our project, among European Mediterranean regions, in order to conceive, develop, and build these facilities that will boost innovation in Europe. This is Greenomed. We already talked about the result. My very last slide is this one. It says that we are addressing here general public because we need to change the culture of citizens of ourselves if we want green manufacturing. We are addressing, obviously, as a main stakeholders, industry, because industry is the green manufacturer. And we are addressing as well as policymakers, because policymakers, they are already creating and will create more and more the environment to build this green manufacturing paradigm. So we are here in the middle, in this conference in Barcelona, we are particularly addressing industry. Many of the persons in the audience, they come from industry. We will have a final conference in Milano at the end of the project addressing more policymakers, but we have still the opportunity to meet companies, clusters, and so on, in order they to be involved in our project. Okay, that was my last slide for this session. We have introduced the work of the day, and we can start now with our agenda. Our idea is to have now a session in which we outline the main challenges of this interregional cooperation, not in general, but asking to representatives of different regions to share their experience, so to understand if we have any common point with that. After that, we will have another session in which we tell you how we have or we are overcoming these challenges with the support of Greenomed. Let's start from this first session. It will be a panel session, but before going into that, I would like once again to set the scene and to introduce the topic very shortly. Obviously, we are late, but we will try to recover. So, the point is, we understood what this Greenomed is about. We understood what we want to do. But now, concretely speaking, what are the current challenges in uptaking novel green technologies for interregional cooperation? Why are we struggling in Europe to do that? There are three levels. We have, first of all, challenges to uptake advanced technologies in general, not for green manufacturing specifically, not in cooperation with other regions, but in general, in any case, companies and especially SMEs are already struggling to integrate innovative technologies in their production processes. Second level, if we go and think about green technologies, which are very specific type of technologies, they are very new. The circular economy paradigm is new, more or less, in terms of industrial implementation. So these are new things. There is the novelty effect, and this is even more challenging compared than general technologies. Third level, we cannot make this uptake, companies cannot make this uptake in isolation, but due to this complexity, due to the smart specialization policies in Europe, they have to cooperate with other innovation partners that maybe are based in other regions. So this level of interregional cooperation adds a new layer of difficulty in this uptake process. What are we talking about? We participated recently to a study of the European Commission. This was a tender in order to understand the main barriers for the uptake of advanced manufacturing technologies in general for SMEs. You can see them here. So obviously the high cost for investment, the lack of skilled personnel, so education is very important, the difficulty to understand to which extent the new technologies can bring an advantage to the business of the company, market uncertainty, the technologies are not mature yet because they are novel, and so on. So there are a number of very concrete barriers that SMEs are experiencing, and this is a ranking based on a wide survey that we did in general. But if we look into the detail at the green manufacturing technologies, we have a set of barriers that are even more specific. They are of different type. Technologies barriers, they are complicated, they are new. Since they are new, companies cannot access support of services related to the design or maybe maintenance specifically of green technologies. They are new, so they are not customizable at the moment in many cases. And also, since they are new, there is some technology uncertainty. They are not proved since big numbers of years. There are barriers in terms of know-how, we already mentioned, lack of competencies on green technologies especially, and also lack of people that are able to work, to operate these new machines in recycling, remanufacturing, disassembly, and so on. There are organizational barriers, very important. You may say they are soft barriers, but they are very important, and sometimes they block everything, even if technology is there. Lack of commitment of entrepreneurs to shift towards green manufacturing requires a paradigm shift in the mind of companies and of entrepreneurs. Lack of corporate social responsibility for green manufacturing. We know that there are very good examples maybe of multinational companies, big companies, but what about SMEs? They have not the tools and the possibility to jump immediately into corporate social responsibility in many cases. There are market barriers. Things about customers' acceptance of remanufactured or of recycled products. They are totally new. They are new markets. And also we as consumers, we might have some barriers, and this makes uncertain and risky the business of companies that are willing to jump into this market. Obviously, we have financial barriers. There are high costs for changing technologies from traditional to green. Companies have difficulties in identifying proper funding sources, for example, for green technologies at different level, regional, national, European level. And there are cultural barriers, lack of information sharing in value chain. How can we establish circular economy if actors of value chains do not exchange information on products that are output of one maybe stage, but input of another stage, because there are IPR issue. And so on. We have traditional difficulties in the communication between SMEs and universities, SMEs and policymakers. Third level, and I close because I don't want to be negative but positive, the highest maybe difficulty. Imagine an SME in one region that has to cooperate with the technology providers in another region. First of all, financial problems. How do I support this type of international cooperation? I'm a poor SME. There are a lot of programs in the European, national, and regional level, but very difficult to apply it to access. Maybe if I'm an SME, I'm not even aware that in another region I can access to some services and competencies that might be very useful for my specific business. I don't know. There are cultural barriers. The language is different. The business style is very different. For example, from Southern Europe to Northern Europe and so on. And in different regions, stakeholders have different roles. For example, we assisted to the interesting presentation of clusters in Catalonia. They might be similar, for example, to clusters in Lombardy, but very different to clusters in other regions, in Germany or in Greece and so on. The same for RTOs. I come from the National Research Council of Italy, but the operation model is different from Fraunhofer or Eurecat or any other, or maybe a number of other RTOs in Europe. Those are the difficulties, theoretically, okay, even if they come from the empirical evidence. Now, I would like to invite some of the guests to tell us more concretely what are the difficulties that they are experiencing in their regions inside this big framework, in order to set the scene and to start drilling a little bit in depth. So, I would like to invite Mr. Alberto Pezzi from Axio, who is the Director General for Industry, and he is the Director of Competitive Strategy in Axio.
Only the last one.
Only the last one. I apologize for that. This was the bio we received. Mrs. Maria Zalidi. Maria Zalidi is... Maria, are you there? Yes. She's one of the co-founders of the Sinoke company located in Greece. And the company is providing systems and methods to monitor agricultural land based on Earth observation. Mrs. Daniela Sani from Aster, Emilia-Romagna. Aster is a consortium for innovation and technology transfer, which is participated by the region Emilia-Romagna and by the universities and technology centers of the region. And finally, it's a Cristobal Bernal, yes, from Carinsa. Carinsa is a company based in Catalonia, and Cristobal works in the innovation department for the development of new products and formulation. Alejandro. Apologize for that. I'm a traditional gaffer. Alejandro. Mr. Alejandro Fernandez is the responsible for the international area in the cluster of innovation companies of the Toy Valley. We met Alejandro in a previous meeting of Greenomed, so this is also an example of how we establish our relationship during the project, and we hope they will last for a long time. So, as you can see, we have in our parterre a quite differentiated representation of the stakeholders. We have industry, we have policymakers, we have clusters, and I would like to ask to all of you to share your experience in terms of challenges related to the uptake of green technologies in these international environments. Be free to give the input you think are valuable for further discussion in the day. The only thing I really pray you to stick to 5 minutes, more or less. We will have time to deepen our conversations in various moments of the day. So please give us a pitch, a snapshot, which will be very useful for the rest of the conversation. Alejandro, I think we can start from you also to compensate the fact that you were the last one being called.
No
Please.
worries. Well, thank you first of all to Interreg Greenomed project for the invitation. I think it's been so far it's been very interesting, and I mostly agree already with most of the barriers that were already showcased there. I come from a very specific region, very special, I think, and it's not because I come from there. It's because we have a highly industrialized area. It happens similar to Catalonia. We are very well known in Alicante for tourism, but we have a very dense and high level industry there. I come from a region that is being known for years as Toy Valley region, because it started with toy manufacturing, but the reality right now is quite different. There are many companies working in automotive sector, food packaging, and several different sectors, but with a common driver, which is plastic sector, let's say, okay? Because honestly they realized that from making toys to automotive sector, there is not that big gap, and they started evolving to that point. So we were asked to, let's say, focus on some of the barriers that we face for interregional collaboration in green manufacturing, and I decided to focus on organizational and cultural barriers. Because from my point of view, and this is probably only in the sense of my region, obviously everyone has financial barriers always for everything, but we realize, and I really agree with Giacomo, there is a big similarity with advanced manufacturing, the uptaking of advanced manufacturing with green manufacturing. And what we saw is that mostly companies only are driven and face changes driven by market or laws or standards or something like that. So if no one of their clients ask for a specific aspect or a specific thing, they don't move on, okay? Or if the law imposes something, they don't move on as well. Two clear examples are, for example, the international standard 14001 wasn't really uptake in the region, until some of the clients were demanding that part. And in another way, for example, bioplastics, as I was saying, we are based a lot in plastic. Until Europe was pressing that much, people didn't really move on. That doesn't mean that all the companies are at the same page. It really depends. I'm only talking about the bad things or the barrier, but we have several companies which are in a really advanced step. But there is another aspect which is very key there. For example, for food packaging, toy, automotive, are all sectors that require high quality standards for all the products that are built there. So sometimes implementing green manufacturing technologies back a little bit the companies saying, I'm not going to be able to manage to achieve the same quality that I'm required to, and I'm not going to reach, for example, using recycled plastics is not always possible. It depends really on the product you're building. And basically in the terms also of cooperation, what we found is that even at our level is sometimes difficult cooperation. So we can speak later about inter-regional cooperation, but also at the level of our region, sometimes it's very difficult. One funny story we had with one of our members of our cluster association was that they were doing, I'm sorry because I don't know the name in English, but for the mirrors of the cars, they were doing the plastic part, and the company, totally neighbor of them, were building the motors for the mirrors. And they didn't know that they were working in this very specific same part. So the part was traveling to Valencia, then come back again to EV, and then again to Valencia, and then again to EV. And they didn't even know that being close one to each other were working in the same aspect. So that has to say that there is a really lack of communication among SMEs and a lot of lack of cooperation. That's also related with a high competence regional market. There was a strong competence among companies, and there has been a lot of confidentiality, secrets, mistrust, but that also probably take us to the possibilities of solutions, because once one company knows that someone is doing, for example, something in green manufacturing, the other company says, okay, if that guy is doing something, I want to know why, and I want to take also this technology. So I don't know how I'm going in time, but that's more or less an overlook on our barriers.
Thank you, Alejandro. So how can we cooperate internationally, if even regionally we have barriers? Cristobal, please share your experience.
Hello, good morning to everyone. Happy to be here. I'm from Carinsa, company of flavors and fragrances, but I think that I'm not here because of this. Thinking a green way, we are lovers of clusters. We are in 4 different clusters in Catalonia and 3 or 4 in different Spanish clusters. And we are also members of the board of Eurecat. So I think that this is the reason why I'm here, not because of my green way. But I want to talk about the cooperation, because my management years ago, they realized that if they want to go faster, they can go alone. But the only way to go longer is go in cooperation. So this is why we are in these clusters, in these associations, because in being there, you can be concerned of the awareness of the consumers, the customers, the policymakers. So you can have your challenges to adapt your strategy to these challenging things of the society. So this means that for us to be in different associations, in clusters, means that for us we can have ears to listen, different ideas to improve our company. Giacomo, you told about the famous Valley deal. This Valley, for us, was easy to find research projects, to talk about universities with technological centers, but for us was a barrier to put these technologies into the market. And this idea of pilot plans, Eurecat advised us to ask for a project, for an instrument, phase 2 instrument, and we was awarded by the Commission European by this project with an overall budget of more than 2 million euros. So for us, it's the opportunity to establish our pilot plan, but not only for our needs, because we think in this open space. Because if this pilot plan is done with the cooperation of the funds of Europe, we think that we are in the obligation of open these facilities to the universities, to the technological centers, to other small companies that, well, that to give the opportunity to return to the society the funds that they have given to us. So this is the idea of Carinsa. Carinsa, the focus is flavors and fragrances, but we have realized that if we are not in a green way, the millennials will eliminate our company. We won't be for these Mitsubishi companies. So we have to think in green things, and so this is our idea to be close to the company, to the universities, to the technological centers, but have also the opportunity to put these technologies into the market. For us, one of the most barriers is the cooperation between countries. We are very comfortable in Catalonia, in Spain. We are very well known in our country, but for us it's difficult to go for more bigger projects. So the European consortiums, for us it's difficult to go for them, for all this lack of time, lack of languages, lack of language things. So for us, I think that we need to improve is our access to international projects, but we think that the only way to go is through EURECAT, through LEITAT, through any technological centers, because if you go alone, it's very difficult to arrive there. So this is one idea. Pass the micro, because if not.
Thank you. Daniela, the experience of Aster.
The experience of Aster. Thank you very much for inviting me here. I think it is the second time that we meet, not necessarily because of Greenomed, but also because of the Med Green Grow community, because I've been in Thessaloniki, I think 2 weeks ago, with another project, Rain Waste, that is part of this Med Green Grow community. So I would like to start with consideration, because I've been impressed about the results of the survey that you present on advanced manufacturing technology, the gaps of in the results. And I can say that if we change the topic of the interview, putting the circular economy at the top instead of the advanced manufacturing, the results will be almost the same. This is also has been proved and touched by the European Commission in a similar survey. And always the financial gaps and the capacity building, the awareness and the skills are the two main barriers in launching the circular economy on reality on the market. And this is impressive for me, because there's a very overlapping in results in this. And because of that, we have to consider the European Commission is completely aware of this. And the launch in 2017, an expert group in providing solution, in particular providing financing model solution for launching the circular economy. And I think if this kind of recommendation will be put in place, will be realized, this also will help also the green manufacturing sector to become more and more green, or to become more and more strong in piloting this kind of green solutions. And now the results of the report has been published. So this is a positive news, I think. It's because despite the barriers, I think we are also now the European Commission is going to provide some solutions to the buyers, and the name of the report is Accelerating the Transition to the Circular Economy, Improving Access to Finance for Circular Economy Project. This is a specific target with a set of recommendations in how to finance in a proper way the circular economy project. Because if we are able to find a way to finance this kind of project, to cover the risk connected to this kind of project, I think we will launch also the green manufacturing sector as well, because, as I said, there's a perfect overlapping in the identification of the barrier for having this kind of project on the market. Regarding the specific experience of the Emilia-Romagna region, what I can say is we are a high, one of the highest Italian wealthy region in Italy, because our GDP is pretty high. We are a very dense number of manufacturing company per habitant in the regions. But what is the strength point of my region is the ecosystem that we have built in order to support the innovation. And this ecosystem is very differentiated, because we can count about the presence of clusters. We have 8 different clusters now. Each of them is specialized in the main topic of the S3, the smart specialization strategy of the region, because this cluster, as these clusters are pretty new, we have built the cluster according to the smart specialization strategy. And we have also the technopoles, we have also the Aster that act as a sort of coordinator of all the initiatives. We have the network of the incubator, the Fab Lab, and so on. But despite of that, what we found that is what is important to have to launch a project on green manufacturing is the clear identification of the partner. And for me, the clear identification of the partner is to have a clear idea of the value chain. The value chain is the core in the partner identification. If you have properly identified the value chain, if you have properly identified the value of the money that you have along the overall value chain for all the actors that are part of the value chain, you have also well identified, and you have also find the key to how to involve the partner along the value chain. This is why when we publish the status, but we publish also the green, let me say, the green book of the clusters, we decided to have this green book organized per value chain, because in that way we have also identified the problems, we have provided the solution, but also we have identified the actors. I'm going to conclude only just to brief consideration regarding the cultural aspect and the role of the innovator stakeholders. And I will mention 2 initiatives. The Vanguard initiative again, because in my opinion, the Vanguard initiative and the fact that the Vanguard initiative put together regions coming from different reality of the Europe, but having the same background of smart specialization strategy is a way to overlap the cultural barrier. And at the same, also this S3 thematic platform operate in the same direction. Because, okay, first of all, because the methodology has been more or less, this is more or less the same for also the thematic platform, but also because behind there's the constraint is to put together reality actors that have the same smart specialization strategy, so the same needs and the same barrier to overlap. I think it's enough.
Thank you, Daniela. Very good. Now, Maria. Tell us something from Greece.
Okay. First of all, it's nice to hear you were in Thessaloniki 2 weeks ago, as we are located there. So, good morning, everybody. Synohi is part of the Greenomed working group called Retain. So, the main idea behind this is an interregional collaboration to create an industrial symbiotic network in order to exploit the residuals from the agro-energy industries, for example, biodiesel and biogas, from the microalgae cultivation. Through our participation in testing activities, we faced different types of barriers. First of all, the concept of an industrial symbiotic network is very new to the region of Central Macedonia, and therefore, for the participants had many doubts and questions how this would be feasible. And I'm not talking only about the financial, which is crucial, but also, as you mentioned before, it has to be very clear from the beginning the role of each stakeholder, meaning the inputs received and the outputs produced. Moreover, some stakeholders, especially companies, have set down the table confidentiality issues and mistrust. This is a fragile subject for any cooperation, especially for green manufacturing innovation. And IBEC has put a lot of effort in order to persuade the companies to participate in these activities and to overcome these barriers. Furthermore, I have to admit that between the different stakeholders, there is an unbalance concerning the time and the workforce. For example, some stakeholders are very active from the beginning, and other ones are not in the same level of commitment. Another barrier that we have to face in order to make this interregional collaboration to boost is the low TRL of some technologies. This especially regards to the pre-treatment of the liquid digestate of the biogas industries, as well as the crude glycerol from the biodiesel. Although we have great support from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki, and still the parametrization of the polluted growth needs a lot of successive tests. For this reason, the contribution of a living laboratory is crucial, and therefore I'm glad that Greenomed is able to provide this service to us. Last but not least, there is in the companies, for most of the companies, especially SMEs, the commitment in activities that have a long-term benefit is not in their internal culture, unfortunately. Yes.
Thanks, Maria. Albert. Okay, thanks also for inviting me to Eurocat and CNR and Greenomed project. I will focus my intervention on cultural barrier to innovation, as I've been asked to do. Well, first of all, I think that the cultural barrier to innovation are not specific of a certain industry or sector, and in manufacturing they are the same patterns that you can find probably in other industries, in other situations. I think there are three main level in which we can analyze this cultural barrier to innovation. One is the firm level, then there is the industry sectoral level, and then the territorial level. So I will give a very quick overview following this scheme. At the firm level, I think the barriers to innovation are more linked to the specific value and enterprise culture of each firm. This is could be different. There is many work that have been done on the subject. And in general, we refer to all those elements, all the obstacles that inhibit the innovation or slow the process of innovation. Here in Catalonia, for instance, we some colleagues in Axio made a very exhaustive work that was how to become an innovative company that highlights some of these. Probably most of them are already known by the public. There's a lack of real committing, real systematization of innovation, the fear of failure, a tendency to optimize on them, the mistrust, that is an element that we found at the different level, the fact of choosing not the right project, poor communication. This is, I think, are topics that are already known by the vast public. I will just, to closing this, the first level, mention something that attracted my attention while I was trying to prepare this speech. That is an article that appeared on the Harvard Business Review some years ago, in 2013, written by 3 researchers, and that it was talking about diversity, how diversity can drive innovation. And here they make a very interesting argumentation on how diversity can overcome this barrier and can be more facilitate, catalyze innovation. There are 2 types. The authors say that there are 2 types of diversity: the inherent one, so the ones that is given, that could have to do with race, with gender, sexual orientation, this kind of thing, and then the one that is acquired by, with experience. So the fact of having worked in a different country, for instance, or the fact of having different experiences that are not on the common. And what is interesting that the result of this, the company in which they have more different people, the diversity of the staff are outperformed in innovation. So they are 45% likely to report entrance in new market growth. They are 45% likely to report market growth, so increase sales, and 70% likely to report to enter a new market. So the people that have more diversity in their staff, and this is, I think, it's very relevant. There are other studies last year, for instance, in Toronto at the TCI conference. We have a very interesting report from the company like Deloitte that is making diversity as a key element of its strategy to growth. And also the authors closed a bit also. Saying that this is what is important is that not only the diversity exists, but also that this is accompanied by some behavior by the board of advisors, by the strategy of the company. So in things like ensuring that everyone is cared, sharing the credit, all these kind of things that also we know. At the second level, when we talk about the industry and the cluster, and my colleague Joan made before an overview of this, I would just highlight a very simple thing. I think that here there is not very big difference between the different industry, but sometimes we can find something that's very specific. And here I think it's better to give you an example. For instance, normally in industry cluster where we have a more higher percentage of SMEs, these of course have more difficulties to overcome this cultural barrier, but these difficulties could be very different. For instance, in a sector like food, and we have here a cluster on gourmet foods, for instance. So that they are very small company, very handicraft company. That in this case they have not a structure to push innovation in the right way. And in this case, the barrier could be more related with poor management, lack of resources, lack of communication. By contrast, in another industry like video games, for instance, even if company also, a majority of them tend to be very small, like in the previous one, the barrier to innovation are more linked to other things. For instance, to regulation, the fact that they cannot attract the right talent from countries like India, for instance, because of other barriers that is more to do with regulation, with environment. And to close, that I think that the last part, last but not least, that is very true in this case, I think the strongest level in which we can analyze this cultural barrier to innovation is the level of the territorial level, the level of the community. Here, I think that there are many things that could be said, and to me, I also refer with an old report that from some old studies from in which they compared the competitive advantage of some region respect to other. And here the work of Annalise Aksinian back to 94 on the regional advantage, in which they compare Silicon Valley to the route 128 in around Boston, highlights really what is the the difference that made a territory that was, two territories that were specialized on ICT in that epoch, and which make Silicon Valley booming respect to the Eastern competitors, even if in the last years this gap has been catch up a bit. And this, when we refer to this, Professor Saxenian refers to what they call the vital intangible in Silicon, and things like, we are not have time to go in detail, but the tolerance of failure, the attitude toward risk, the fact that in Silicon Valley second opportunity are seen as a positive things, not that are not seen as a bad thing, like in more in other countries, like here in Europe, especially in the Mediterranean regions. The obsession for a product, the variety, again the diversity. I think it's very important. In fact, I think that the figures about foreign entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley respect to native one are extremely high. The fact that anybody can play. And building a bit on this, some years ago, in the framework of a working group on cluster and emerging industry, we developed a model in which this territorial culture, this business environment was a bit one of the three angles of a triangle in which we identify what are the drivers behind the emerging industry that at the end also is innovation. The other two, mentioning it very, very quickly, are the demand, the market. So I think that also it's very important that always when you have an innovation, is it always because there is a market opportunity, so something new that is coming up. And the third one is the innovation, the technologies. It should always to have a disruptive technologies that could come from an external factor. In this case, also green manufacturers, the effect of being the need to be more green, the sustainability is also a condition. It's also only if there are these three elements. I think you can overcome this barrier and become more innovative. I think I have already consumed all the time, so. I will stop here, and maybe if there is a second round, we can continue.
Yes. Thank you. So thank you very much for having shared these pillars of experience. I know, and I'm sure you have many more, but now you just have put on the table the most relevant ones. I would ask to the audience if there is any questions or curiosity for our. Please, Mr. Raffaello Pruger, introduce yourself.
Hello, so I start here the questions. My name is Raffaello Pruger of Tecnoalimenti from Milan. We are a research consortium of the food industry. My comment to this morning session is the following. There was an issue, there is, according to me, an issue, a constraint that was touched but not sufficiently elaborated this morning, and which is the competition, the issue of competition between companies and the industrial property right. So I would like to, a little bit, you guys to elaborate a little bit more your experience on this. Because as I understood, in the case of the mirror, for example, that you were telling before, if there is a collaboration between or inside a value chain, so this issue of competition can be controlled, can even be an incentive to participate, because you, at your level, you don't have any competitors, but you can somehow gain some added value and some additional knowledge that can help in the subsequent market. But my question is, how about in the clusters? At the very beginning, the first presentation here in Catalonia, about the clusters in Catalonia, I heard that there are very narrow clusters, like the wine cluster and the gourmet cluster, for instance. So I would like to know, how do you deal when you work in the uptake of innovation, when you try to promote and to animate innovation between among companies, or especially SMEs, that are at the same level in the value chain. So how can, I don't know, this is, I would like to have a little bit elaboration on the fact of competition in the case of this uptaking of technologies. Thank you.
Very relevant. Who is willing to start? Alberto.
Okay, I can start, and also Joan could add something. I think that the competition is necessary. Competition is there, and it's also very good. It's one of the factors that push the innovation, because in fact, in all the cluster, all the places, well, from here to the examples that are made to Silicon Valley, there is companies that are competing in the same. But we have to. So this is something that is there, but there is another element that I don't have the time to go more in detail, and I take advantage now, that is trust. The fact that you have competition does not mean that there's not a level of trust in the cluster. So you can have competitors, but at the same time that are collaborating in horizontal and pre-competitive initiative. In fact, this is the most common project you can find in cluster. The fact that a competitor that could collaborate for setting up, I don't know, a new academy or new vocational training center with a specific focus, because serve all the industry. We have a lot of examples here in Catalonia of this kind of collaboration, or a laser tanning cluster that, following an example from Italy some years ago, set up a water treatment plant for all the cluster, in which the company collaborate, and then they were competing in other things. They were competing in the markets. So I think this is something that is good for innovation. In fact, strong competition is one of the main drivers for innovation. And you have to I think that if you have only competition but you don't have trust, this is a problem, because then it's a strong obstacle for the competitiveness at territorial level of the cluster, because you have to be competitors, but also to be able to find some areas of collaboration with the cluster, and also with other clusters that you can collaborate at cross-sectoral level. So I think an example also, Carinza could say this, because they are I think that she wants to speak. Okay.
Yes, our idea is that the competence is not the people who does the same as you, because this is a partner. Because if you have a problem, they can understand you. The real competence is for example, for us, we are doing fragrances and flavors. The real competence is the trend to not use fragrances in the industry. This is our competence. Or the trend to put more foods without additive. But this is a real fitness for us. But the company that's near us that does the same they can help us to be in deal with the policymakers to say that the additives are not bad. It's another thing to be surrounded by people who has the same idea of you. Of course, yeah, there are many things that you cannot share, but the idea of business, the competence is good for you, because they can understand you. Because if I was the shareholder of my company, I will speak in a different way, but as a worker, we need strong companies that do the same, because if one company closes, you can go to the other. So the competence is not bad. I think that it's also a thing of the past, that all people wants to be, not to share, but young people, I'm not so young, but I think that we have to think in young people. It's open space, open mind, surrounding. You need to be open mind. Yes, but for us, the real threatness are the trends. Not to use chemistry, not to use the deslocalization. These things for us are the real competence.
Okay. Yes. This is a problem. I agree with you. So this is a reality. So we have to face with this reality. But we have also to consider, as Giacomo said during the presentation, that those companies that are not going to pass this barrier are designated to the valley of the dead. We are in the valley of the dead for those companies that are too small and are not going to share or to try to share the competencies with others. That is the concept of the value chain. That is the value of the value chain, because the cooperation between them is the way to overcome this kind of barrier due to sharing of the competency, sharing of the knowledge. The problem of the sharing of the property right is very strong, especially, has been very strong, especially in the past, when the market was small. If I think at the Italian market, your success was my failure, because if you succeed in the market is the one of the Italy, I fail. But now the market is much more bigger. We are talking about globalization. So if you succeed in this globalized market, it's also my succeed in this market, because I can share with you what I have, and both together we can compete in a more globalized market that is also much more complex. This is the key. This is the key to try to overcome this kind of barrier, but it's a kind of mentality. And if you cooperate in a logic of the value chain, this mentality can be changed. And if you don't change this mentality, you are destined to the valley of the dead.
Well, in our region, I said competence sometimes, and I think I overview a little bit, because on my point of view is a really problem in a real problem in our region, and as cluster we are trying to see how to tackle. So I don't have the solution at this moment, but I have one very good colleague from Marinha Grande in Portugal. There is a region where they do mold making. They have mold making industry, and they are at the very same page, all the companies. So they are direct competence one to each other. But what they did with their cluster is to build like a common brand for all of them, and be able to obtain or to attack bigger markets that they were capable before. They made strong rules on how to distribute the demands and all the different products they build, all for mold making, and they are reaching Germany, they're reaching Audi, they're reaching Mercedes, Volkswagen, so they are approved that cooperating can take you further. But this is very, very difficult. What we try to do is at least tackle horizontal problems and common problems, and see how, for example, in mold making, we have several mold making companies. They're having a lack of skills, so we are gathering them, trying to see how to tackle this lack of skills, and this takes me to green manufacturing as well, because I think this is like more horizontal, so there are more possibilities for cooperation there, and maybe it's not that really difficult, or is a way even to reduce the competence among companies.
Okay. I think it's covered. Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. So, summarizing, come together, partnership in order to overcome competition and target a bigger market together. This is the summary of what you said. It looks easy. It looks easy, but it's very, very difficult. And this is a perfect link for the second part of the morning, because in the Greenomed project, we provide a methodology, we provide some tools to cooperate in a structured way and to generate trust in groups of stakeholders with the orchestration of clusters, also to overcome local competition, achieve higher critical mass, and get more internationalized. So after this session that we can close now, we are going to drill down a little bit into the methodology and present how we think this can be done and also transferred to other clusters and other regions. For the moment, I thank you very much for this superb start of the meeting. Now we have a coffee break, 15 minutes. It will be in the room 128, which is at the right of this room, and we can continue to network together and discuss our common interests. Thank you.
Okay. So, okay, so let's start the second session of the second panel of the conference after the first opening session and the first panel that we had the interesting discussions among different types of stakeholders in different regions, which was for me a sort of mini ecosystem here, which was very interesting. Now let's move to Greenomed. Okay, so to focus more, sorry. Oh, yes. Laura just reminded me about a logistic thing, that all of you have badges there outside, Greenomed badges, which you can find on the desk outside of the of here. And there are some sticks behind your name, and then you can use those sticks for the matchmaking event. There is an A0 paper there, so you can go there and you can put the stick in front of the name of the stakeholder, of the participant that you want to meet with during the matchmaking session, and you can book that slot for your meeting with them. So please do this, because our colleagues in Eurocode need this information by 2 p.m. today afternoon, so they can arrange everything for the matchmaking session. Okay, thank you. Okay, so let's go more into detail of the Greenomed and what we did in Greenomed, but also relating it to the discussions that we had today morning. Why? Because today morning, in the first session, we talked about the barriers from two sides. The internal barriers in the regions to do collaboration for uptake of green technologies, and then the barriers for the trans-regional collaboration between different regions. In this session, I will explain to you briefly about the Greenomed methodology that we formalized during the project in order to address this issue, in order to support SMEs to uptake the green manufacturing technologies through a trans-regional cooperation approach. And then we will have our partners who were the tester of this methodology, who implemented this methodology in their regions, and they will talk about their experiences in different regions and how they could face the challenges that they have, and how could Greenomed and Greenomed methodology help them to face with these challenges. I will start with a brief presentation of the Greenomed methodology. Greenomed methodology is a methodology which was basically initiated through Vanguard Initiative. So during the Greenomed project, we formalized this methodology. And basically, it's a methodology which supports SMEs to conceive, design, and implement pilot plans for green manufacturing, to eventually create a European network of pilot plants based on the smart specialization strategy of the regions. So trans-regional network of the pilot plants. So it includes different components. It's a cooperation process, but through this cooperation process, clusters could offer services using the tools that have been provided by the methodology. There are two main users of this methodology. The first users are the clusters and intermediaries, so business support organizations, because they are the direct users of this methodology. They take this methodology, they implement and test it in their regions in order to go on with designing and implementing of pilot plans for green manufacturing. And then companies are the final and end users of this methodology. Why? Because they are somehow engaged and involved in this process, in this collaborative process of design of pilot plans, because the idea and the objective of these pilot plans at the end is to help companies to uptake these green manufacturing technologies, to have access to green manufacturing technologies. Here, I can show you the overall view of the methodology, of the Greenomed methodology. So, as you can see, there are different phases of the methodology, starting from left to right, and during all of these phases, different services are offered by clusters to the stakeholders, to the regional stakeholders, in order to go on with design of the pilot plants, and supporting tools will be used by clusters to offer these services. Okay, if I want to go into very much detail of this methodology, it will be very time consuming, but I try to give you an example, okay? So to start from the first phase, to tell you the story of what's happening when you start from the first phase, and then what you gain at the end of the process of the methodology. So imagine that you are a cluster or an intermediary in a region that wants to design these pilot plants for green manufacturing, having in mind the perspective of being a part of a network of a European pilot plants. So what you need to do as the first step, which is phase 0, is that to set a framework and background of Vanguard. Why? Because Vanguard, as previously speakers talked about it, is the basis of this network of pilot plants, the Vanguard initiative. So in many regions, it could be the case that they even don't know what is Vanguard. In advanced regions, they know what is Vanguard, but in some emerging regions, maybe there is not awareness of this initiative. What is this? What is the benefits? What's the conditions? So there is a need to raise awareness about this existing initiative, Vanguard initiative, to different types of stakeholders in the region, to policymakers in the region, because at the end it's a sort of political initiative and it needs political support to get engaged in this initiative. From the other side, to the companies, because it's important that companies understand that what's the eventual benefits of an initiative like Vanguard for them. So it's important to make the whole ecosystem understand what is Vanguard, what are pilot plants, so what is the benefit of pilot plants, and what we are doing there. Then when this is done, we go to the next step, which is identification of key topics for pilot plants. So here, what clusters or intermediaries will do is that they try to work as an intermediary, as a moderator, to identify the relevant topics for pilot plants for green manufacturing in the region. And how they can do that, it depends on the dynamics of the region. It depends on the ecosystem of the region. In some regions, this could be a very top-down approach. There might be some strategic topics at the political level, and which needs to be reinforced by the clusters, and they could be understood by the clusters and pushed forward. In some other regions, it could be a bottom-up approach. It could be that this comes from the real needs of the companies, from the creative workshops that different companies get together, and they understand that what are my problems in terms of green manufacturing, and then the cluster work to collect these topics and to formalize them and to finally define what are the relevant topics based on the smart specialization strategy of the region. When this step happens, then there's a check gate with Vanguard, because we should make sure that this is aligned with the perspective and goal of Vanguard initiative, and also the topic is aligned with the topics of the efficient sustainable manufacturing pilot of Vanguard initiative. And then when the topics pass through this check gate, we go to the next phase of the methodology, which is setting up of regional core groups. Now we have topics in the region. We need to create a core group. We need to find the champions and pioneers in the region in order to initiate a critical mass at the beginning, even maybe with small number of stakeholders, but it's necessary to have a regional working group, so that this regional working group can start working on a definition of this pilot plant, definition of the concept of this pilot plant altogether. And this working group should consist different types of stakeholders in the ecosystem. And this is the first part, also considering the previous phase, that the clusters help the regional stakeholders to collaborate together, because from one side, companies come to the working group, from the other side, RTOs and universities come, associations come. So the cluster will work as an animator of this working group in order to let the collaboration between these stakeholders begin, and they start going on with developing this concept of pilot plant for the region. And after that, the working group should motivate these ideas again by being being animated by the clusters. What does it mean? It means that they should highlight, they should strengthen the strategic relevance of the topics that they have identified. They should start to think that how they could extend this working group that they have created. And when they do the motivating phase, they go to another check gate, which is the second check gate. So in the second check gate, it will be checked by Vanguard that if this is good enough to be considered to go further, to be a concept node of Vanguard, okay? So if it can be a part of one of the existing, the idea is still one of the existing demo cases of Vanguard, or as a potential new one. And if the working group can pass through this check gate, then they start to extend and consolidate the working group. So both regionally and interregionally. So they will start to find other stakeholders, they attract other stakeholders to make it larger, to create a critical mass at this stage. And then starting also to establishing interregional collaborations with other regions, with the relevant stakeholders in the other regions. Here, then you have two ways, let's say, to go on. The first one is that here the working group will come out with the concept note, which exactly defines that what is the idea of the pilot plan that we have in mind? What are the technologies that we use on this pilot plan? What is the industrial application? So a very detailed level of explanation. And then if this idea, if these technologies and industrial application is aligned with one of the existing demo cases in Vanguard, then it can be discussed to be a part as a use case in that demo case, okay? So for instance, imagine that we come out with a topic in terms of circular economy. For instance, I don't know, recycling of PCBs, for instance, okay? And if this is already aligned with an existing demo case in Vanguard, which is in this case, it's with DN remanufacturing, so then there will be discussed with DN remanufacturing that if it can be included as a use case in DN remanufacturing, okay? And if so, then they will start to design the regional node, okay? So the region will start to design its regional node to be included as a use case in the, for instance, in this case, in DN remanufacturing demo case. And after that, they should also define a business plan in the next phase. Why? Because at the end of the day, funding is required to support this. And in the business plan, they should exactly define that what is the services they are offering, what is the investment plan that they have, what is the funding that they are going to target, what is the cost structure, what's the risk structure and risk model that they have. So they have to explain everything clearly. And after that phase, when they have a very concrete business plan, okay, they can go to the implementation phase of the pilot plan. Then another way could be that when the regional working group comes out with the idea and the concept note of the pilot plant, the concept note doesn't exist in Vanguard, okay? So its potential, it could be considered as a new concept node in Vanguard. And if this is the case, so the second path would be followed. The regional working group will go on with defining this new concept node, but also to understand that who are the relevant stakeholders in other regions in order to start collaboration with them to create this concept node. And then by involving other regions, then they have to get back to the phase of designing the regional node. So when they have this critical mass in the regions and in collaboration with other regions, they will design the regional node and they will go with definition of business plan and then implementation. So this is the whole story, and during this process, clusters are the main animators of this process. They will offer services, And here are the 8 services that have been defined during this methodology, which should be defined during the different phases of the methodology to the regional stakeholders. They should communicate and raise awareness about Vanguard pilot plans. They should do regional mapping to make the stakeholders understand that who are the stakeholders in the region, what are they offering, who are the pioneers. Then they should act as a regional orchestrator. They should animate this working group. They should push these working groups to work together, to guide them. And then they have to create them. They have to make a frequent meeting of the working group and to give this life to these working groups that they have created, and to coach them to design the concept notes. And then when they have this working group, they should help the working group to internationalize, so to start the relationship with other regions, other stakeholders in other regions. And during this whole period, of course, they should support the stakeholders to identify the existing funding opportunities that they can use at the end to fund their ideas. This was the whole story of the Greenomed methodology, you know? And here I just want to give you one example about one of the phases. And I chosen this one. Here you can see in each phase there are different services which are offered. Each service has some sub-services, which is the blue layer. And the third layer is the tools that, using these tools, cluster can offer the sub-services to the stakeholders. We don't have time to go through all of this, but I thought that for our case, it's very interesting to talk about this phase, which is about consolidation of the regional working group. Why? Because the service that the cluster offers during this phase is the service for internationalization of working group. And this was what we were talking about today, you know, trans-regional collaboration. So what can a cluster does during this phase is that they could start to do benchmark with other regions, other advanced regions, to understand that what is happening in the other regions, what are the best practices in other regions, then to start initiatives with other regions, so to organize joint events, visits to the pilot plants, starting to organize matchmaking of their stakeholders with other stakeholders. So this is the type of service that they can do in this phase. And okay, what tools, for instance, in Greenomed we have provided to these clusters in order to do that? It's a collection of documents and presentation of working group which already exist now in Vanguard in other regions. So they have this to understand that which is the relevant one that they can use. Then the existing formats for the visits, for the joint events that have been already done by the regions in the Vanguard, and then the existing opportunities and initiatives to support this internationalization, because, for instance, they can use the platforms such as EEN or ERIN, because these are the platforms that support this sort of internationalization and interregional collaboration. And going through this process, then at the end, okay, I don't go through this because it's too long. At the end, what we do with what we did, we are still doing and we are going to do till the end of the project in Greenomed, is that we started testing of this methodology in different regions. So we started this methodology in Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes, in Marca region in Italy, West Slovenia, East Slovenia, continental Croatia, and region of Central Macedonia. Through clusters that you can see, they are the partners, clusters and intermediaries that you can see here. And through this implementation and testing process, we had partners which acted as coach of these testing partners, who were from Lombardia and Catalonia, so CNR, National Research Council of Italy, Lombardy Cluster of Intelligent Manufacturing, AFIL, and Eurocat. Okay, So these three partners acted as the coach of the other partners. Why? Because they had already gone through this process. They had the experience from going through this process, and they tried to transfer their experience and knowledge to these testing partners to support them going through this process. More or less now we are in this phase in Greenomed. So we have some regions that they are setting up their regional core groups. We have some other regions they are motivating their ideas. And we have some midterm results so far, but we will go on till the end of the project. So the midterm results is that we have so far in our testing regions, we have 13 regional working groups which have been created. During all these, within these all 13 regional working groups, 76 regional stakeholders are mobilized. More than 50% of them are companies. The rest are universities, RTOs, authorities, and associations. And okay, I think this was the last slide that I had. I want to come back to the, okay, there's a problem here. Okay. I want to come back to the introduction of the panel, because now what we are going to do is that I would like to invite our partners in Greenomed to join me in this panel in order to discuss about our experience in Greenomed, their experience in testing this methodology, how this methodology could help them to overcome the barriers and face the barriers that were previously discussed during the first session. So I need my laptop for the presentation of the panelists. Okay, so we have Ms. Roberta Curiazzi. She's from AFIL. She's a project management in AFIL. She's in charge of supporting the development of the technologies contents of advanced manufacturing in Lombardia. We have Ms. Chiara Mansanta from Cluster Market Manufacturing. She's a project manager. She supports SMEs in the development of their innovation and competitiveness through new products and services. We have Mr. Jordi Romero, who is the manager of the strategic initiatives in advanced manufacturing at Eurocod. We have Mr. Borut Zrim, who is the head of the External Relations Department at Pomoria Technology Park. We have Ms. Renata Puppet, who works in the Chamber of Economy, Varaždin County Chamber, in the fields of foreign direct investment facilitation. We have Mr. Maxim Vermeulen, who is a project manager in Plastipolis, working on the topics of Factory of Future and smart plastics. We have Ms. Georgia Papanaguto. Sorry, Georgia. Who works in IBEC, Inter-Balkan Environment Center, as a consultant of local stakeholders in the field of green and blue growth. So, thank you very much to all of you for joining us in this session. Maybe I can start from Maxim. Yeah. Maybe I can start.
Maxim, please.
But if you want, you can change. I can start from Maxim, who comes from Plastipolis, Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes. Because the case of Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes is quite interesting during Greenomed project, because Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes is a very industrialized region in Europe, one of the 4 motors of Europe in terms of manufacturing, already a structured ecosystem. What has been your experience? Why such a region like Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes participates in a project like Greenomed, and what could be the benefits that you could gain?
So, thanks for the question. Hello, everyone. Yes, as you mentioned, that Auvergne-Rhône-Alpes region is one of the most industrial region in Europe. We have strong ecosystem about advanced manufacturing. regarding Vanguard initiative, because the region is very advanced in the Vanguard initiatives, but also with the smart specialization of the region, that they decided to push forward some strategic domains in the region. And one of the domain, of course, it's plastics, so it's good for us. And especially smart plastics. So, of course, with this kind of ecosystem, it looks like it's quite easy. We'll succeed in everything we want to do. But no, of course, we face some challenges. As I can say that in the plastic industry in France, most of the companies, they are SMEs. There are less than 30 people in the company. So we know that we have to support this kind of SMEs in their development. So that's why we need to establish, some kind of transnational relationships with them, because we don't have the critical mass in the region. Even if we are a big region, we don't have this critical mass in this specific topic. So that's why we open ourselves, and we wanted to expand our ecosystem outside the region. That's why I came out with Greenomed methodology that we use to cooperate more efficiently with external partners such as Eurecat. That is good to say it because it's the best location to talk about Eurecat. It's what we do, and it's what we already did. Because to be concrete, that we organized already last year some collaboration with Eurecat, that we visited the facility of Eurecat last year with one of the members of the working group. So it's good that we make some SMEs participate in this collaboration. And on the other way, we invited also Eurecat for our big event about smart plastic last year. So that's why the collaboration starts. And it's through Greenomed that we consolidate and expand our working group regarding smart plastics. So it's very important for us that to open ourselves, and because sometimes with SMEs it's not very easy to make them work together, even in the region. But outside the region it's even more complicated. So we need, of course, some tools that we use through Greenomed methodology to expand what we do in the region, but to find good partners such as Eurecat. But I mentioned Eurecat, but of course we have other possibility and potential with other partners, specifically in the smart plastics area. And we of course have some regional projects such as City of Plastronics, which is a big project in our region, but we have to, of course, to open it to external partners. That's why we are very proud to be part of Greenomed projects, to expand our ongoing project and to have a wider vision of what we want to do and what we want to achieve in the next future.
Okay, thank you, Maxime. So it was interesting that you could start this, you extend this interregional collaboration, and as you said, also extend your working group, because you had this in your region, but you could succeed to extend this critical mass in your region through Greenomed. Thank you. Now it comes to my mind that, okay, we have different cases in Greenomed. Okay, every region has been different. Another interesting case was the case of Slovenia. Borut is here. Because in Slovenia, you had the challenge that many regions we had, also in the morning session we heard about it, that it was difficult to engage companies in Slovenia. Very difficult.
Thank you, Gulbu.
But I know that you went forward and you identified topics, you created working groups, but from the other side, you have also the strong political commitment in Slovenia. How did you face it, and how could you use Greenomed to exploit this existing commitment to engage companies?
The truth is basically that what you say, that Slovenia is a member of the Vanguard initiative since November last year. That definitely gives the positive push towards companies, clusters, and all ecosystem, since it gives the opportunities for the future cooperation and also funding opportunities, which is the most essential issue of Slovenia. Considering that Slovenia has only 2 million population, which is practically a bit more than Barcelona, and that our economy, national economy, is pretty small. So basically we are very dependent on being connected to the international markets. And from that reason, basically also we see the only opportunity for our companies to survive or to develop is being competitive. And this Greenomed actually is a multiple layer opportunity for intermediates and also for the Slovenia in general, in a sense that we can connect our companies, RTOs, through the network of the Greenomed. And what's the most important, it's pretty standardized approach with a methodology which enables us as intermediates and let's say actors who are in a way helping companies which are members, like in clusters, chambers, or in Slovenia there are special forms like SRIPs, which is strategic partnerships, basically enable them to connect. And what's more important is that through this project also we were like scanning the market, domestic market, for the opportunities, and through the methodology naturally we are striving for internationalization, because for Slovenia, like I said, it's important that the companies are internationalized, and if it's done in proper way with the proper contacts or linking to the international sphere, then it's pretty much easier for the companies to be competitive in a way. So yeah, political support on top-down, yes, it exists, and now it's basically up to the clusters and companies to use this opportunity. And Greenomed is, in my opinion, very good networking opportunity, plus that we are able to develop some services which will enable our members or tenant companies basically to gather contact with the, let's say, more developed regions, where they have common interest in topics which are in domain of S3, or in Slovenia it's called S4 strategy. And we are looking actually for the opportunities that our companies and clusters mingle and do some projects that will be beneficial for all sides actually.
Okay. Thank you, Borut. Thank you very much. And I want to use this opportunity and jump to Renata, because you had this problem, but you didn't have the political commitment in Croatia. This was the situation that you were facing. But on the other hand, your case has been interesting because you were an interesting case of establishing a link between industry and research through your living lab, because you have a living lab which is an infrastructure of a company, and you involved it in the project. Maybe you can explain about your experience more in Greenomed.
Yes, it's true. We have first of all I have to say that we have two Croatian partners in Greenomed project. One is Cluster Intelligent Energy, and the other partner is Croatian Chamber of Economy Varaždin. So we have two different perspectives. The truth is also that we, in Croatia, we didn't know Vanguard initiative, so we didn't know benefits, and we spent time and more efforts to see what could be benefits of joining Vanguard initiative. Cluster of Intelligent Energy very soon discovered the subtopic, which could be a topic for a living lab, and supported by companies. Cluster established in Zagreb in one company, actually, living lab. The other living lab is established in Varaždin in R&D institution in one university, and the first topic of first living lab is appliance of monitoring system and smart usage of electrical energy, and the topic of subtopic of the second living lab is circular economy. So the both Croatian partner did not find synergy in two living labs, but nevertheless I think this interregional cooperation is very well developed, and I think this is very good contribution to maturation of ecosystem in Croatia.
Okay, thank you, Renata. So in a way, you could mature your ecosystem in Croatia to some extent.
Yes, since we have really problems with ecosystem, we have lots of challenges in Croatia, starting from fragmented ecosystem, starting with finding critical mass of companies around some subtopics. But I think this is a very good step forward in order to create a better environment for SMEs, for all involved stakeholders.
Okay, thank you, Renata. Thank you. And okay, let's jump to Italy. Marke, Chiara from Cluster Market Manufacturing. In your region, I know that maybe the challenges that you had were, okay, financially everywhere, there are the challenges, but the case of Marke is that it's not that you don't have the initiatives. There are initiatives, but maybe it was not possible to seize the opportunity of the existing initiatives for uptake of green technologies. What you did in Greenomed in order to use this opportunity?
Exactly. Thank you, Galbo, and good morning, everybody. What we did in Marke is that, as we said before in the first panel session, there are economical and cultural barriers. But how we can overcome these barriers? Basically, thanks to Greenomed, we had a set of sequential and well-coordinated action that allow us to overcome this barrier. So basically, we had the opportunity to organize bilateral meetings with our coach partners, such as AFIL, for example, that come to Marke region and explain to our companies what is Vanguard, why we have to be involved in Vanguard and also in Greenomed, and why it's important to work on circular economy. And the other important thing to underline is the possibility to site visit. So you have to know that before Greenomed in our region, they have no idea that what is a pilot plant and how it works. Thanks to Greenomed, our company had the opportunity to come to Lombardy region to visit the pilot plant and to understand what type of facility is, how it works, and why it's important to have a similar infrastructure at regional level. So now this working group, thanks to also the support of the cluster, we are working together to push in some way the Marke region and the government to replicate this model at regional level, so to create the same infrastructure at regional level. And another important issue that I think is important is that before Greenomed, we tried to organize the working group, but we didn't succeed. Why? Because we didn't have a standard methodology to follow. So thanks to Greenomed, we had the opportunity to establish and coordinate working group because there was a methodology already tested in Vanguard region. So basically what we did first was to define a common topic. Before Greenomed, we were too much general and company couldn't focus because the topic was too general. Now we define a specific topic, and as said before in the parallel session, it's important to properly identify value chain, so that's what we did. And second, as suggested from Greenomed partners, we found a coordinator, a moderator who can support us in this activity and animate the working group. And we can see that this is a successful strategy because at the moment we have a regional working group that counts 11 stakeholders formally engaged. That means that they have signed a letter of intent and they want to work in this working group. And the majority of them are companies, and we have one university and one research center. But this number could increase in the next period and in the next month. And what we would like to do during the next period is also to start a transregional collaboration with Lombard region and with AFIL, because they have let's say another working group who works in the same topic, so we can manage this activity and this transregional collaboration. And just the last point is that it was really important, Greenomed, for us, because thanks to the working group that we had in the region, we are now working with them to guide Marche region to open calls and to open to get funds to our companies in a specific way and in a well-structured way. So it's not funds for something that is not important, it's not relevant for companies, but our funds really structure and really focus on the needs of the companies.
Okay, thank you, Chiara. So it was also helpful because as far as what I understood from your talk was that you also could emphasize your role as an intermediary, because you took the needs in a more concrete way of the industrial stakeholders, you transfer it to the policymaker in order to bring the proper instruments to support.
Exactly, we act as a facilitator, as a cluster. This is our main role.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Chiara. And Georgia, from Greece, yes, region of Central Macedonia. We just have to cross the sea.
Of course.
Yeah, we have just to cross the sea. Yeah.
We will see each other.
And in Greece, in the region of Central Macedonia, you had an interesting story, because you had your own difficulties, like every ecosystem. But at the end, you found your own way to somehow go through.
We used to do that in Greece.
Yeah.
Okay, so the case study of Greece and especially the region of Central Macedonia. During the implementation of Greenomed methodology in our region, we have to face several challenges. Most of them has to do with the internal culture of SMEs, as well as the level of commitment of our policymakers. SMEs in our region are not familiar with interregional cooperation, and beside the fact that are small in size and their capacity, they usually not select to cooperate with other SMEs, especially because they face this type of cooperation as time-consuming and with not a short-term revenue. Moreover, issues such as mistrust and confidentiality are always present in the beginning of cooperation, especially in this type of cooperation that is not linked directly with the financial mechanism. Thus, for us, it was not an easy task to create a critical mass around several subtopics of green manufacturing. However, we succeed to create three small but flexible and functional working groups upon different sectors of bioeconomy and energy efficiency. In all the cases that we are working on, companies coming from agro-food and agro-energy sector are on the focal point of each working group. Now, at the political level, we spend a lot of effort in order to inform and promote the interregional cooperation regarding the green manufacturing in our regional authorities. We are in direct link with the region of Central Macedonia, and we're co-working upon two critical issues that both believe that we will act as a drivers in order to go towards the green manufacturing. The first one is the enrollment of the region of Central Macedonia in the Vanguard Initiative. After we have the first Greenomed political meeting in Brussels at the end of 2018, the region of Central Macedonia launched the process required in order to be a member of the Vanguard Initiative. Moreover, the region of Central Macedonia are in close contact with the Greenomed project in the framework of smart specialization. Now, As for the benefits derived from the implementation of Greenomed methodology in our region, we have to state the following. Even despite the fact that the Greenomed methodology focus more in the long-term benefits and opportunities of pilot plants, our local SMEs involved in the testing activities have already experienced some important short-term benefits. Greenomed act as a bridge connecting them with other SMEs, clusters, and research institutions in order to cooperate in the frame of green manufacturing. They got informed about new technologies and new opportunities raising from the green manufacturing, and in cooperation with the Greenomed Consortium, several of them have already started to design and create a new, greener, and sustainable future for their companies. That's the short story from Greece.
Okay. Very interesting. I also noticed that in the first panel, there was a Greek company which you mentioned. She's a part of your working group. So you started also internationalization to bring them into Barcelona with yourself.
It's the second step.
To open the scene to them. Okay.
Just one comment. Especially for Greece, it's a very good opportunity to take knowledge from other regions. Especially in technologies that our TRL is small.
Okay, thank you,
So
Georgia.
we are on the way.
Okay, thank you, Georgia. And
I have to pass it to...
Yes, I want to cross the sea again. But and go to Lombardia, a bit to Milano. I feel Roberta, because Lombardia has been one of the regions which have been previously involved in Vanguard. In Lombardia, we started to use this sort of methodology before. AFIL is a co-coordinator of one of the Vanguard demo cases. So you already entered this project having some experience in creation of working groups, mobilization of stakeholders. How could you exploit the raising opportunities in Greenomed, or was there anything that you could exploit inside of the, maybe it's better to ask like this, was there anything to exploit for you as an more advanced regions compared to the emerging regions during Greenomed?
Yeah, indeed, the Lombardy experience is dated back in 2014 when the region established the clusters at regional level, and AFIL is the cluster for advanced manufacturing. So in the context of advanced manufacturing in Lombardy, as a cluster, we started the implementation of this kind of methodology in strict connection to the activities that we started in Vanguard Initiative. This kind of methodology and these steps allow us to promote the cooperation among the companies at regional level. Because, you know, we have a lot of SMEs in Lombardy, and it's not easy for them to change their mind and to start cooperating among them in a perspective of open innovation. And another thing that was really important is that this kind of methodology allow us to promote their internationalization, but in a sense that we bring them to be the protagonist of interregional initiatives such as Vanguard. And this was an extremely value added for our companies and in particular for SMEs, because without the cluster and without this kind of activities, they won't be such a protagonist in interregional value chains. And now it's 5 years that we are in such a project, and I can tell you that the results are quite impressive. Overall speaking, we are 140 members, more or less. We have companies and association and research center and university that cooperate, and from this cooperation, we succeed in having a lot of funded projects, both at regional level, involving only companies from our cluster, but also at interregional level. So we were able to mobilize about 9 million euros of funding. And this happens in 4 working groups dealing with the topics that are aligned with our smart specialization. And 2 of these working groups are dealing with the topic of green technology. So we can say that after 5 years, we completed more or less all the steps of the methodology, although some groups are always having new ideas, and so for new ideas, we are always following the same steps. So it's a kind of recursive process. But being in this stage of mature phase, we can say that we are now experiencing new challenges that are quite different from the ones that we heard since now. And the main one is that we are struggling to keep companies engaged, in particular SMEs, because the problems that we are facing is that SMEs are really looking for short-term results, and this is not always compatible with the perspective of such initiatives, because they are more strategic and they guarantee results, but in the long term. In this sense, Greenomed was a great opportunity for us, because working in this project allow us to generate a lot of new opportunities and bring fresh airs and new ideas to our working group. And another important thing is that the project allow to write on paper this methodology that we experience step by step in this year, and share this methodology with other regions. And having such a standardized method allow us to simplify the connection among the different regions, because we are all working in the same framework. We are building working groups and with the same operation behind. And so it facilitates a lot the connection among the working group. For example, as Chiara told before, we are trying to connect our working group on circular economy, and also we are not experiencing, we did not experience language barrier because we are from the same nation. I assure you that this was not easy. So Greenomed was the opportunity to connect a working group of different regions, but in the same nation. The project facilitates a lot the cooperation among cluster and other intermediaries, and we were also able to find new topics to propose to our company. For example, the topic of food manufacturing that was raised by Slovenia, but talking with the partners from Slovenia, we realized that it is an important topic that should be exploited also in Lombardy. And for this reason, we also involved in this process some stakeholders at regional level. So today we have here a stakeholder that is strongly involved in the food topic, which is from Tecnoalimenti. And the project gave us also the opportunity to collaborate with other clusters inside our region. Indeed, today and also in the previous events, we involved the Lombardy cluster on bioeconomy, since bioeconomy is an important topic emerging in this project, in which we don't have a competence as a cluster for advanced manufacturing, but Greenomed gave us the opportunity to connect with other clusters, also at regional level. And then, of course, this methodology also allows us to work on the basis of S3 strategies. So we can ensure the political commitment also when it comes to create connection with other regions. We should be supported by the policy commitment. This is basically our long experience in this field.
Thank you, Roberta. Thank you for the interesting dimensions that you mentioned in your talk. I know that we are running out of time, so I
will be short, no problem.
No?
I can do that.
Take your time, Jordi. I want to, not at last, but not at least, I want to come back to Barcelona, because once they said all the roads end in Rome, but today in Barcelona.
Well, we were connected.
Yeah. So more or less you had the same experience of Lombardia, because you were involved, you were very active. but maybe you can also explain from your point of view, from Catalonian point of view, what has been your experience in Greenomed.
Okay. Thank you, Golbo. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today. In fact, as this morning our colleagues from Axio has told us very well, Catalonia had a mature environment, a mature ecosystem on innovation and an industry. But in fact, the clusters activity, the region also needed, well, as all of us, to reflect on their strengths and weakness and to align their strategies to the new paradigms in Europe. And this realized in Catalonia to the RIS3 strategy and through some instruments that allowed us, for example, to coordinate a new community on advanced manufacturing. This was a couple of years ago. In fact, I'm coordinating this, and that generated like a cluster on R&D projects for promoting this innovation on sustainable manufacturing, efficient manufacturing that is very well aligned to what we are dealing today with and to vanguard specifics. As you said, we were from several years ago, 2014, for example, pushing the vanguard course, pushing these methodologies. But even though Greenomed project has allowed us to reflect in more detail, in more depth into this and to learn. When you transfer this, your experiences to new regions, to try to implement this good in the regions, you're learning. You're learning because you are reflecting deeply in what you have been through and what had been the successful lessons to be transferred, and what were the mistakes, the barriers, the challenges. Is when you teach something to somebody, you learn better your lesson, and then you discover new things to improve in an improved way. In this regard, using the project and going through the Greenomed methodology, putting this in black and white in a paper and doing these diagrams, we reflected on that and we tried to improve our reality there. We were already struggling there in some areas, and for example, in our case, we engaged with more strength with the clusters, with the cluster community in Catalonia that were not as much involved in that community on the advanced manufacturing in Catalonia, and it was a weakness that we had because it reduced the impact of our realities. In fact, using these instruments, we are developing already a pilot plan on smart plastics and advanced plastics that we need. We know that the territory needs it and demands that, but for sure we need the clusters, and we are combining here today with some cluster from Catalonia, some industry in that can participate more openly to this. And this was one of the lessons learned and improved through the applied of the methodology of Greenomed. And the other thing was that we need to generate this European value chains. We need to go for colleagues, not competence, but colleagues to cooperate to make it happen. Industry is already cooperating transregionally, transnationally. So we need clusters, we need RTOs to cooperate in this way through Europe, because if not, other with an increased critical mass countries and regions will outcompete us. So in this way, none of our regions, even we are mature or we have better departing points, we can do it alone. We need to generate this network, and through Greenomed, we were improving our activity, collaborating with Overronals, with Plastipolis, with Slovenia, and other regions also in some particular cases. And this is one of the lessons also to be deployed even for mature regions like Lombardy and us, that we cannot do it alone. We can always learn, and we can always improve by creating this network and helping other regions to generate complementary and parallel capacities and aligned working groups, strategic projects for the regions to go to the global market. Okay, that's it from our side.
Thank you, Jordi. Thank you. So you emphasized on the concept that also panelists in the first session said the interregional collaborative value chains that we require to go on with. And I assume that this is something that perhaps our testing partners, these are the things that perhaps you will face in the in the next stages of your activities that you're doing. I would like to open the stage to the questions of the participants. If there is any question. Okay.
Greenomed is for you.
We did very well then.
Yes. Okay, I don't know if it's a good sign or a bad sign, but okay. So, if there is no question, I can just say a final message, and Giacomo then later on, if I think what I can just wrap up from this session is that the message is we need collaboration. We need collaboration inside of our region, but also outside of the region, interregional collaborative value chains. And each of the regions and partners that we have in Greenomed, they have their own stories. So each of them had their own case studies, they had their own challenges, but at the end, they are anyway going through this to start also the opening their borders to interregional collaborations with other regions. Giacomo, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, maybe we can be very pragmatic also to introduce the afternoon. So what we have here to offer, also thanks to the funding of the MED program, is a structured, tested, and we think well-functioning method to cooperate for strategic innovation projects based on infrastructure. This is there. Now, this has been experienced inside our consortium by the partners. So we have experienced the difficulties of transferring complicated way of working from regions that are used to do that to other regions that are starting or growing at the moment. And we had some experience that, and we consolidated this experience. First message, we will continue, because through the testing we have just triggered this cooperation. You saw the methodology is a sequential set of phases. It is quite long, and it takes years to complete the methodology, from the idea of a pilot plant to its implementation and operation. It takes 2, 3, 4, 5 years. So for sure, one Interreg project like this one is just a trigger to start this. And some projects already started inside this community, some strategic ideas, which is reflected in the workshops that we will have in the afternoon. For example, we have organized working tables on bioeconomy, food manufacturing, circular economy, and so on. We have 5 or 6 of those. These areas, they represent the thematic domains which were stimulated by this interregional cooperation, and they will continue. Second, these areas, they are open. We are fully inclusive. So we would like not only to take this methodology that is codified, that we will codify also in a book, which will last much more than the project, okay? We want to take this methodology and transfer it to other clusters and ecosystems in Europe, but in addition, we would like to open these working groups also to new participants coming from industry, RTOs, clusters, and so on. What else can we say? I think we can close the session. We try to transfer to you the experiences that we had for the first time in the consortium. And then we would like to invite other stakeholders to enter our community and to continue this experience, which is not going to end at the end of the project.
Just will add also, Giacomo, that as are here today, we are a lot of industries. This can seem a little bit political and strategical, but at the end, it means that we can tune the tools that the regions and Europe and towards your needs, towards the needs of the industry to try, test, and develop new technologies in green manufacturing. This is very complicated, very costly for industries, for us, for sure, for SMEs, more than that. And we as intermediaries and clusters and RTOs, we try to cover this by generating these pilot infrastructures when there is a critical mass, not only for our region, but for other regions generating this network. So that's what it is for you there. You need this help. We try to help you, and you also generate network with other regions, with other countries, with other enterprises there to push forward your competitivity. And that's what we are here today to develop during the afternoon.
Yes.
Apart from the methodology, at the end, we use this methodology. We try to transfer this to the intermediaries, clusters in other regions, in order for helping industries and promoting green manufacturing and sustainability, and business sustainability in our regions.
And in the afternoon, we will continue applying the methodology. So the working sessions that we will have in the afternoon, they are not theoretical, they are part of our methodology, because in these working sessions, we have invited some key stakeholders that are already participating to the working groups, plus new interested stakeholders that we have started to mobilize in our process. And we will have a discussion which will be structured based on a process which is part of the methodology to start this integration. Okay, so it will be one moment of coming together through the Greenomed methodology. So if the new participants will find interest in that, for sure they are very welcome to continue the relationship with us, which means to register to our community, to participate to our working group, and to organize all these things together. Sure, Robert.
Thank you, Giacomo. I have a late question or general remark, but having this valuable panel, and I would like to pose a general question because according to my experience, the clusters in general are usually seen as aggregation of established, even very small companies. But talking about innovative technologies, very innovative applications, which part, according to your experience, I can give you mine, have startups or innovative startups? Because according to my experience, startups are a little bit not so easily looking to this aggregation, to these overall organizations. But on the other hand, I guess that they are a natural catalyst for a win-win situation, because in many cases an innovative startup can have a boost integrating itself in a cluster, working with some established companies, and on the other hand, especially for small companies, they can literally represent an injection of innovation. No? So do you have any experience in this sense? And this is in general, but in particular for green technologies, I had in my region, that is in the Venice area and the northeastern of Italy, a couple of very interesting experience of innovative startups that matched with some established companies, and both were boosted by this joining the forces. Thanks.
Maybe I can add something, because this stimulates some thought about it. I think there is a tendency in the last years that a startup is a category by itself. That they are placed in an incubator, and most of them, it is true that probably 80-90% of the new startup are related with ICT or this kind of thing. But actually, if we thought at clusters, and also my passion is economic history, and we look the history of cluster, 95, even if not more, percent of the cluster are created by a process of spin-off from a mother company, and that employees that see opportunities in and take it for creating that. But I repeat, this is now there is this tendency to see startup as something as a category by itself and isolated. I think that this could be there is a need of visualizing it more the new company startup related with the existing business and maybe more integrated in the current ecosystem.
Questions trigger questions.
Very stimulating question, because I agree with both. Indeed, we are used to see the startup as an isolated part of the business, but indeed, it's in my opinion, this is a weaknesses, and the cluster is exactly the place where this startup can play a very important role in the concept of the open innovation, because they trigger exactly the innovation in an, let me say, old style way to conceive the business. They trigger it. And if you catch, and you are in the cluster, and the cluster is more or less is an environment, a protected environment, and you are able to catch the startup, your capacity to innovate is faster and faster. So I fully support, and I push the cluster to be integrated with the incubator in order to have this force in the cluster and not outside.
Sorry. Well, I don't know if this is allowed, but take, for instance, in our region, because also I am from Emilia-Romagna originally, the case of the packaging machinery cluster in Bologna that was created almost from in 25 years by a process of spin-offs, and that created from a unique company from ACMA, that all the rest came out, and then some of them are now multinational. So, and this is without an incubation, with the support of external research center or vocational training, the Valdini Valeriani, but and it remains, this knowledge remains in the cluster now. There is tended to be this incubator in which there is, well, it's good because there is a cross-fertilization between different sectors, but a bit the specific knowledge of that sector, I think it's a bit detached.
Our Greenomed partner, Cluster Intelligent Energia, has something to say about it.
Thank you. Okay, so if cluster itself or everybody treat the cluster as a platform, then it is not important it is startup, it is a multinational company, it is a small company or medium company or any kind of company. It's a platform for being together, for innovate together, for business together, whatever you want. If you want to play cards, if this is some strategy goal or something like that. But in any case, the clusters mainly is now to innovate together for new products, for new services, and so on. Thank you.
Yes, I just want to add things. That's a very good point. And what we are doing now as a cluster is to involve startup inside the cluster, because the startup has some skills, some competence that are very high requested by big companies or structured companies. So we are matching these two different startups with structured companies in order to satisfy the needs of the big company that sometimes they don't have inside, and they don't know where to look, where to find it. So what we are doing is exactly this match, involve them inside the cluster and guarantee this match. So that's it.
I would like to add something, of course, that most of the startups, I mean, in France, they come from the university or laboratory. So we built a network, a community with companies, but also with universities and laboratories to know which competencies can be from this university and the new companies can be created from it. So, of course, we are very aware of spin-off from university in France that to add value to the industrial skills, because when we think about startups, it's a lot about digital, but a lot of startups, they work about material, about industrial processing.
So that's why it's very important for all of us to create this network of different kind of stakeholders to be aware of what can be the new competencies expected for the industry.
Just a small input from Greece. We have enrolled some startups in our working groups, and actually they are the more active. They bring fresh air, new knowledge, and maybe they don't have the experience that other companies have, but the matching is very good, at least in this level of cooperation. It's the most active and the most fresh input that we have in our region.
To finalize, we need the startups for sure, and at the end it's generating new big companies for the future. In the end it's generating the value chain, flexible, and these are the startup play the role of making it faster, catalyst, and also the flexibility and the generating different opportunities for established markets, and for them participating in clusters it's a win-win situation for sure.
Just to be clear, what we are telling you is not in general or in theory. This is the experience that we have lived while cooperating with this methodology into the various regions. So we have the knowledge of several ecosystems, and in some cases, such as in Greece, or in some other cases, startup had special roles. We can write a book about it, and we will do before the end of the project, to consolidate and to make it, public. Rudy, from Slovenia.
Thank you. Well, what we have noticed, because we were too late to include startups in a cluster, that companies, bigger companies, started their own incubators, and they were starting with working with startups. So we said, okay, we should intensivate this, because I do not know what is the situation among all the others, but by us this process is starting, so that big companies need startups, for new innovation.
Yeah, the point is that we need a methodology to include startup in the right moment and in the right phase. Okay, now I think we can close and go for lunch, close the morning session. We have 1 hour for lunch, correct, Laura? No, 3/4, and then we will start the parallel sessions in the rooms here outside. Laura, please.
Yeah, sure. The rooms for the afternoon sessions are upstairs. So when I think that you all received an email of your working group. If you don't know your working group or want to change the working group, you can do so. It's not compulsory, the assignment of working group, so you can do and change the working group. Upstairs there will be the name of each working group in each door, so you can choose your working group. If you want to see which working group you've been assigned, there is the list in the A0 document outside, so you can check it. And nothing else. It will start at 2 o'clock, in principle. And then the lunch is the same in the same place at the coffee break, so you can go now. Yeah. Yes. Just one thing more. When we finish the working groups, we will come here again to have the wrap up. So, and the conclusion of each working session. So I think it's interesting because if one partner or one entity wants to go and only can go to one working session, but want to also know which kind of conclusions has been set in another session, here we will make the wrap up of it, also the working sessions. Okay, so thank you.